All right, it's only been a little bit more than 24 hours since the US team announced their Ryder Cup picks, and already the fallout is absolutely stacking up. We've got a quote here from Tiger Woods' ex-coach Hank Haney, someone who's very close to the PGA Tour and has been for a long time, saying something that I think really echoes what a lot of you had said in the comments on our last video, kind of validating what a lot of your own concerns were. We're going to talk about that in a second. Of course, the comments are always open, so feel free to weigh in here as well. But the other thing that we've got to dive into are some of the quotes from both Zach Johnson and his vice captain, Fred Couples, who are both really playing defense right now. Fred Couples even said that he had over 50 texts come in right after the picks dropped, just asking why this guy or that guy was not on the team. So lots and lots of question marks. Plus, we've got Zach Johnson defending why he didn't pick Dustin Johnson, which I think only further solidifies what Hank Haney was saying, because if you read closely into this quote, you can kind of see how Zach was really only looking to the PGA Tour players and largely ignoring Liv, aside from the unignorable, is that even a word? Inignorable Brooks Koepka performance. So we're going to dive into all that, but let's first talk about what Hank Haney said. He had a tweet that came out yesterday, and he said, "It didn't matter who Zach Johnson picked. The USA team will be heavily favored, but those picks confirm it's the boys' club." So many of you had said this in the comments yesterday, just saying that no matter what, this is just a clique. These guys are just friends picking friends. Remember, we dissected and talked about why a guy like Keegan Bradley was left off the team, somebody who has a really significantly powerful record this year with 2 wins and a top 10 finish in the Tour Championship. Hard to see why he was overlooked. You could also make a case for Dustin Johnson. You could make a case, no doubt, for Bryson DeChambeau. There was a lot of guys in there who definitely got overlooked. Now, one important point, too, that I thought so many of you brought up in the comments, which I really liked, was this idea that what is the real crux of the captain's picks? You know, the point of having a captain's pick was that largely so that the captain could, in the kind of the last kind of minutes leading up to the Ryder Cup, could select some players who are hot at that moment, some players who are in form, maybe guys who were not picking up a lot of points and accruing points all season or didn't accrue enough points, but over the couple of months leading up were particularly hot and could be added as kind of last minute additions, which makes sense. Golf is a sport where you can get, hot at certain times. Players get hot and they're just dominant for a little while. Look at even what Brian Harman was doing recently and a lot of these other guys. So I think that's a really good thing to point out, because what we're seeing here with the JT pick in particular is the exact opposite of that. You're picking somebody based on much, much prior performance and not current form, because there's nobody arguing that JT's form is not great right now, to put it lightly. But let's dig into some of what Fred Couples was saying. Now, you got to expect that the vice captain, of course, is going to come to the defense of his captain. If these two were disagreeing with each other publicly, I think the team would have a whole lot bigger issues. So in a way, I can't blame him for coming to that defense. But he was really called to task of trying to, in particular, this Justin Thomas pick, and really try to justify that. So one thing Fred Couple said, he said, "I think the JT thing is the strongest pick. That was a no-brainer. The analytics would say no. The way he plays golf said yes." And there's a little bit of a point to be made in there. A lot of people will say that JT at the end of the day is a gamer. He's got a strong Ryder Cup record. Here's a guy who went 4-1 in Paris. He's somebody who's going to rise to the occasion. I get all that, but again, his performance just hasn't been there, and there's a very big concern that him being so cold of late will be a hindrance for the team kind of going forward. But you got to admit, there's a lot of weight on JT's shoulders to play well, and when you're not playing well, I think sometimes the last thing you need is that added pressure. But going even further, and again, I think there's a little bit of kind of scraping the barrel to try to find out and justify this pick. I think a lot of us are reading between the lines, think that ultimately JT was picked, as Hank Haney had pointed out, as part of this boys club and buddies. And I know that even Zach Johnson was trying to make a case for team cohesion and guys and teammates playing together. But I can't help but think when I read some of these quotes that there might be a little bit of trying to justify it in hindsight. So this, to me, I think is a little bit of a stretch. But what Fred Couples said yesterday on PGA Tour Radio, he said he was talking to Jim Furyk a little bit about this as well. And he said, according to Furyk, we didn't play the course in Paris the way it should have been played. JT did. JT will play this golf course like it should be played. So he's going back to JT's great record in Paris. And I've heard this argument before of some people saying, well, European soil is a little bit different when you play over there. And JT was selected because he played so well in France. And there's a lot of synergies between this Italian course and that French course. Now, to me, I don't know. I think it's a little bit of a stretch. I get it. But I also think that all of these guys have the games that will translate to that subtle difference of going over there and playing this Italian course. I don't think that there's anything that's super unique where you want to bring in a very specific type of course specialist. Again, you guys let us know in the comments whether you think that this is a stretch or not. But going further, Here is where Fred Couples kind of addressed in more depth, broader, all of the guys who were kind of left out. So I'll read you this quote. Admittedly, I was left a little bit confused by it. Let me know how you interpret it. But he said, I've got 50 texts today why 2 or 3 guys aren't on the team, and I don't have an answer for that. The only answer I have is this is the team, and the team has spoken. And if the team likes another guy a little better than that guy who didn't win 6 tournaments and do all this, then no one has a problem with any of it. I mean, I don't know what really to say there. I mean, he's justifying in the beginning saying that basically he's getting a lot of heat. I see that, 50 texts. Why are these guys not on the team? I think his next line where he's saying, hey, the team has spoken is kind of his way of trying to now move past this, come together as a team, and just, like I said, back up his captain and back up his team and basically try to stop the questioning. But the rest of this quote, honestly, I don't quite get it. I mean, I love you, boom, boom, but I don't know what you're really driving at here. It in a way, just to me, there's nothing that really negates this idea that this is a boys club. I mean, it sounds like that's almost like what he's saying, like this is the team, this is the way it is. So now let's get it quickly into Zach Johnson, who again has been having to answer for this. I'm sure there'll be many more press conferences where it'll continue, but Zach was kind of called to task asking specifically why not pick Dustin Johnson. And Dustin Johnson was another one that many of you had brought up in the comments on yesterday's video where we talked about Keegan being snubbed. A lot of you thought that Dustin was snubbed as well. I did say and make the point that I think that you can make a case for a lot of guys. There's a lot of guys. No matter what, there was going to be at least 1 or 2 guys who probably deserved to be there who would have been left off because at the end of the day, you've only got the 12 spots. But I think there's something in this. So let's dive into the quote a little bit. And Zach had said, I love DJ. He's a dear friend. Obviously, it's stud when it comes to playing in competitions. Through and through, his record speaks for itself. It was one of those situations where it's harder to gather form. It's hard to see how guys are doing when they're not competing against these guys that earn their way in the team in particular. The way I see it, all the guys that do not play on the PGA Tour had an opportunity to earn their way or at least be in the realm of complete discussion, and Brooks Koepka put himself in that position with his play. So what is Zach saying there? Well, one, to me, I feel like it's kind of proof that Zach's eyes are laser focused on the PGA Tour. He's watching the guys over there, and he's basically saying that to get in front of him and get in front of his eyeballs, you had to play well in the majors, which is exactly what Brooks Koepka did, at least for the first half of the year. He's saying, these are the guys who are accruing points. I want to see how you're playing in relation to them. Keep in mind, you're only accruing points if you're playing these PGA Tour and major events. There's no points being accrued if you're playing on LIV. I could be reading too deep into this. You tell me what you think in the comments. But the way it sounds to me is that Zach is not even watching LIV events, because he's saying effectively he wants to see how these guys are competing against the other PGA Tour players. Now, some people have made a lot of case for the idea of how well Bryson DeChambeau, shooting a 58 and recently being very hot on the LIV Tour, has played. Some people will talk about some of the great performances that DJ had put together on the LIV Tour this year. But ultimately, the way I see this, it sounds like Zach Johnson saying, I'm not paying attention to that. I'm only paying attention to how you're playing either in a PGA Tour event or in a major. So it's just kind of further proving that their only at-bats are, for these LIV guys, are in the majors if they want to turn heads for a captain's pick. So regardless, no matter what, we've got, like I said, and I'm sure this will continue to kind of roll out. I'm sure we'll continue to see even more of this as we get closer to the Ryder Cup. But there's no denying that both Zach Johnson and his vice captain, Fred Couples, are playing huge defense right now, just trying to justify some of the picks that were being made. And I think a lot of the frustration that has been coming from the fans, and we saw it in all of your comments yesterday, continue to let us know your thoughts in the comments below. But I think that's being justified in a lot of ways when we're hearing from voices like Hank Haney saying it's a boys club. So make sure you subscribe, make sure you stay tuned. We're going to continue to dissect this here on the podcast as the Ryder Cup gets closer, and let us know what you guys think in the comments.